as of the time of this recording, Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 comes out in just 1 week. That's only 7 days, which isn't actually a lot when you really think about it. So I figured it's time to remind your beautiful brains of every major thing that has happened in the Jujutsu Kaisen Season 1 anime, plus give you everything that you need to know about Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 without any spoiled and some just mild little teasers for your brains. So if you haven't already, I suggest that you subscribe to this channel for an incredibly massive PP buff. And as always, let's just get into the video. This is Yuji Itadori. He was a not so normal kid who at a high school in Japan who was a part of an occult club that happened to find finger of one Ryumen Sukuna. This is Ryumen Sukuna. We'll get into that later. He's very important. Yuji goes to visit his grandpa, who unfortunately passes away in a hospital just before he attempts to tell Yuji about his parents, but they end up bickering. But Yuji's grandpa gives his grandson an important message and asks Yuji to use his gifts to save others no matter what, so he can die surrounded by people, and then he passes away himself. Yuji then bumps into Megami, who tells him just how dangerous the finger of Sukuna actually is, and that his friends are actually in great danger right now. Yuji and Megami go to the school and find Yuji's friends are in trouble, and they are quickly overwhelmed by a cursed spirit that is running rampant within the school. And Yuji, remembering his grandpa's wishes, uses his gifts of being an absolute giga child and decides to save the others, and decides that the best course of action to do this is to eat the finger of Sukuna Ryumen in hopes he will gain cursed energy and defeat the cursed spirit. Megami warns him against this, stating that he'd die. However, there is a 1 in 1 million chance that Sukuna Ryumen would actually instead manifest within Yuji's body. And you know, this being a shonen anime, you know the drill by now. That spirit, Ryumen Sukuna, actually reincarnates into Yuji's body. However, Yuji's simply built different. I wonder why that is. He manages actually to suppress Sukuna. Megami is about to do something absolutely insane here. I wonder what that is. I wonder what those hand symbols mean. And just as this happens, Gojo Satoru, the strongest Jujutsu Sora, happens to appear and finds out that Yuji has actually eaten the cursed finger. Gojo tells Yuji to swap out with Sukuna in order to find out whether Yuji has complete control over his body or not. Gojo and Sukuna end up fighting a little bit before Yuji takes control over his body again, and after Yuji wakes up in an execution chamber with Gojo Satoru, who then tells Yuji that he's actually being executed. However, he does give Yuji a choice: either be executed now or find and ingest all of the remaining Sukuna fingers and possibly save many people in the process before being executed. Remembering the words of his grandpa, once again decides to hunt down the remaining fingers and decides to help Gojo as much as possible. Yuji ingests the second finger of Sukuna and successfully manages to control his body after the fact. Gojo then takes Yuji to Jujutsu High School, a school for sorcerers who learn and practice Jujutsu in order to fight and eradicate cursed spirits. While doing this, he gives us a quick history lesson on Sukuna, who's actually been around since the Heian era, which is also known as the Golden Age of Jujutsu sorcery. Yuji is formally introduced into Megami Fushiguro, who is told that they are going to pick up their third person in their group, who will be Nobara Kugisake. Sometime after this, Yuji and Nobara are sent on their first mission to find and eradicate a curse, was a way of Gojo finding out what they are capable of under the stress when a life is at stake. Yuji and Nobara pass this test with relative ease and flying colors. Not long after this, Yuji and Nobara and Megami are all sent on a mission to investigate a possible appearance of a special grade curse, which is where the grades of curses and their sorcerer counterparts are actually explained, all the way from grade 4 all the way up to special grade cursed spirit. While investigating the scene, Megami and Yuji end up arguing about whether they should save the body of a man who was killed. And a fun little Easter egg here, this man who was actually the man who killed Rika in the Jujutsu Kaisen film. So that's some fun trivia for you right here. While these two are arguing, they realize that the special grade curse spirit has now actually appeared in front of them and slices off Yuji's hand and kidnapping Nobara before they can even react here. Yuji tries to bargain with Sukuna to help them out in the situation. However, Sukuna just simply refuses, telling Yuji that if he switches with him right now, he will kill everyone around him. Yuji tells Megami to run, and once Yuji is free, he'll switch and have Sukuna fight the special grade cursed spirit. Megami runs away and finds Nobara and signals to Yuji that it is time to switch. Yuji switches with Sukuna, who makes absolutely light work of the special retrograde in front of him and shows us even a domain expansion. A domain expansion is the pinnacle of Jujutsu sorcery and the realization of what a sorcerer can do. After realizing Yuji is unable to switch back, Suguru decides to go on a small rampage here, finding Megami and beating the ever-loving shit out of him, and then killing Yuji by taking Yuji's heart out of his body. Yuji Itadori has officially died. We then switch back over to a man named Suguru Geto and the disaster cases here, and if this man Suguru looks familiar, he should. You saw him in the Jujutsu Kaisen 0 film here, but this time he has a scar on his forehead. I wonder what that's for. Interesting. Not long after this, we are reintroduced to Maki Zenin, Inumaki Togi, and Panda, who are also major characters within the Jujutsu Kaisen 0 film, who we're now only just learning that Yuji Itadori has actually died. Also, by the way, if you haven't already, I suggest you subscribe to the channel and also go and watch Jujutsu Kaisen 0. It'll get you all caught up on what you need to know for the new season. We learn within the coming weeks, Jujutsu High intends to hold an exchange event between the two branches of schools known as the Goodwill event that will pit the students against each other in different types of events here. We then switch back to Suguru, who is plotting with the disaster cases Jogo, and Suguru mentions how he's not so sure Yuji Itadori is actually dead. We then cut over to Yuji, who is actually inside of Sakura's innate domain, and if you're not sure what this is basically the realization of a sorcerer's soul. This is what forms a domain expansion. Yuji and Sukuna end up fighting inside this domain, and Sukuna swiftly defeats him. Sukuna proposes a binding vow for Yuji to be revived within the real world, and Sukuna proposes the conditions that once Sukuna chants the word extension, he can control Yuji's body for 1 minute. However, he cannot kill or harm anyone within this time frame. And the second condition is that Yuji will forget about this pact altogether. Some interesting trivia again. In the manga, the word extension is actually changed for the word enchain. However, this binding vow is extremely important. Won't be for a little while, but it's extremely important. Yuji agrees to the binding vow and is brought back to life, and Gojo decides not to tell anyone until the exchange event and decides to train Yuji secretly until that happens. While Yuji is training and learning how to control his cursed energy, Gojo is traveling when he's attacked by the cursed spirit Jogo, who we saw plotting with Suguru. Gojo then proceeds to beat the ever-loving shit out of Jogo, which is where we get a brief explanation of Gojo's abilities. And after whooping Jogo's ass for a little minute here, Gojo decides this would be a brilliant teaching opportunity for Yuji, teleporting back to grab Yuji and to bring him back to the battlefield. Jogo decides that he's had enough of this white-haired dude shenanigans and activates his domain expansion, engulfing Yuji, Gojo, and himself within inside of it. And Gojo explains the basics of a domain expansion to Yuji and then expands his own domain, and in the process gives us all an eyeball reveal. Very sexy. Gojo's domain completely overwhelms Jogo, and Gojo simply removes his head and then proceeds to ask him some questions. Jogo, however, is then rescued by the other disaster case known as Hanami, who was accompanied by Suguru Geto, who leaves saying he can't be seen by anyone. I wonder why. Some interesting reasons there. Suguru and Hanami take Jogo back to the hidden domain from a sea creature who will become very important within Season 2 here. And we're introduced to Mahito, the fourth and final disaster case, who again will become incredibly prominent within Season 2. And the group plans to move forward with their plan and a grand scheme event in Shibuya of October 31st. An event that will be covered within Season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen. We are introduced to Mai Zenin and Aoi Todo, both of these who will also become insanely prominent and influential to certain characters' growth within the series. Wink wink, nudge nudge. Mahito starts to move around the world and is found by a young man named Junpei who can see Mahito after Mahito had transfigured 3 humans in a cinema. Yuji and Nanami are also sent to investigate this, and we find out that Yuji's training and failure to control cursed energy has resulted in an awkward, somewhat cursed technique hybrid, which he now calls Divergent Fist, that allows Yuji to hit an opponent and have his cursed energy lag behind it in order to deliver a second hit. We then switch back over to Mahito, and we see Mahito starting to groom Junpei into a warped mindset, who then starts to hate the world around him, and even exposing him to Jujutsu sorcery, and even giving him the ability to use Jujutsu sorcery by altering his brain chemistry. Nanami and Mahito end up fighting, and Nanami conjectures that if Mahito were to survive, he would become a serious problem down the line. He does. He becomes a very, very serious problem down the line. and you are not prepared for it. Nanami backs out the fight and regroups, and we see later on Yuji coming face to face with Junpei, who has now had his whole outlook on life changed, twisted, and warped by Mahito, and the two end up fighting when Mahito finds them and recognizes Yuji as Sukuna's vessel. In an effort to get Yuji to switch out to Sukuna and have them join their cause, Mahito transfigures Junpei and ultimately killing him and sending Yuji into a rage. And then Yuji and Mahito then begin to fight. Nanami finds Yuji at the school and the two team up to give Mahito the beatdown of the century, thus giving birth to one of the greatest Jujutsu Kaisen memes that have ever existed within the community.
Get him up, let him get up, let him get up, let him get up. Fight back! Fight back! Fight back!
During this, Mahito figures out his own domain expansion and activates it, trapping Nanami inside. And as things are looking incredibly bad for Nanami, Yuji breaks into the barrier, catching Mahito off guard. And due to the effects of Mahito's domain, he ultimately ends up touching Sukuna's soul. And Sukuna, being the absolute menace he is, wants nothing to do with this creepy patch face touching him and slices Mahito, causing him massive damage. This signals the beginning of the end within this fight here, as taking a major damage like this causes Mahito's domain to completely crumble, allowing Yuji and Nanami to land violent blows on Mahito in an effort to finish the fight. Unfortunately, Mahito manages to escape the fight from Yuji and Nanami, and we fast forward a little bit here and we see Suguru, Jogo, Mahito, and Nao, who have now mostly healed, plotting to go to Jujutsu High and find the 6 fingers that Sukuna has that are stored there. Fast forward a little bit more and we are at the Goodwill event, and Yuji is now revealed to be alive to the rest of Jujutsu sorcerers who thought that he was dead within the school, much to their shock and surprise and even dismay. The Goodwill event begins, and one of the principals within Jujutsu High plots to have Yuji Itadori killed for him being the vessel of Sukuna. Almost everyone agrees within this meeting except for Aoi Todo, who absolutely refuses and instead threatens to kill him for giving orders again. The Goodwill event begins officially, and Yuji and Todo end up fighting. However, they end up with a one-sided friendship that Todo imagines after discovering that they have a similar taste in women. This will most likely become the most iconic romance within the series going forward, and you are also not ready for it. Todo decides to start teaching Yuji while fighting him, and while this is happening, Panda and Mekamaru are also fighting at the same time. Again, Mekamaru is also a very, very important character in the upcoming season. Kamo and Megami are fighting, and as they are fighting, they are interrupted by Hanami, the disaster case who rescued Jogo previously from Gojo back when they fought. Gojo and the others who are spectating realize something is wrong and go to investigate and find a barrier that has been cast around the area where the students are competing within the Goodwill event. However, this was made to not let Gojo Satoru enter it. Maki and Megami try to fight against Hanami, however they are being interrupted by Yuji and Todo, who are referring to each other as brothers now after becoming absolute best friends during their fight. Again, this is another bond within the series that I've already mentioned and will become incredibly important within season 2. Todo tells Yuji that he has to fight against this special grade K spirit alone until he can land a Black Flash. Again, Black Flashes are something that will become incredibly prevalent within the coming episodes and series. Yuji lands his first Black Flash, but it doesn't stop there. He then proceeds to break the record for Black Flashes, with Yuji's focus being so great that he ends up slobbering on himself. I feel that. I relate to that a little bit there. But Yuji and Todo begin to fight together with incredible synergy against Hanami and proceed to put the beating down on Hanami. Not long after this, Todo actually reveals his case technique to be something called Boogie Woogie, which activates by Todo clapping his hands together and switching himself or anything with encased energy. As their fight continues, they push Hanami into using their domain expansion. However, before this happens and before it's completed, Gojo Satoru breaks the barrier that was holding him outside of the Goodwill event. Gojo then uses a technique known as Hollow Purple to blast away anything between himself and Hanami, severely wounding Hanami and eviscerating everything within the area. Hanami manages to escape, and however, Mahito Mahito is present at the Jujutsu High School and manages to collect the 6 fingers from Sukuna, which was their original purpose. Fast forward a little bit more, and Suguru and now 3 disaster cases, Hanami, Jogo, and Mahito, have all regrouped and are now discussing their plan to seal Gojo Satoru within Shibuya of October 31st. Yuji, Megami, and Nobara are sent on a mission to solve why people are dying under a bridge, and noticing that Megami is off, the two press him for an answer, and he reveals that his sister has been under a curse and in a coma for some time. Also, this is also very important and relevant information. Yuji, Megami, and Nobara also enter a domain of a curse spirit, which actually turns out to be the womb of a special grade curse spirit, exactly like one from the previous mission where Yuji was killed by Sukuna's actions. Yuji ends up getting into a fight with a cursed womb death pagan known as Kechizu, who's the brother of a second cursed womb death pagan known as Isu, and Nobara runs into this person. While this is all happening, Megami comes face to face with the finger bearer, the special grade cursed spirit, and the two start fighting, with Megami showing us his domain expansion for the first time in the series. Although it's incomplete, Megami is able to destroy the finger bearer completely. And while this is all happening, Yuji and Nobara are now fighting the two brothers Kechizu and Iso. We get a brief explanation of the cursed womb death patterns that came to be, and they introduce us to a man from hundreds of years ago called Kamo Noritoshi. Yuji and Nobara fight and defeat the brothers. While also doing so, they both simultaneously end up hitting black flashes on their respective opponents. Shortly after this, we are introduced to a character known as Choso, who is the third and the eldest brother of Kechizu and Iso. Once again, a character who will become incredibly prominent within the story of Jujutsu Kaisen going forward. And that concludes everything major that has happened within the series of Jujutsu Kaisen Anime Season 1. Now, to give you a brief explanation, spoiler-free of course, and maybe some minor teasers in there, of everything that is coming within Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 will actually cover 2 arcs in one core. We'll have the first arc being called Gojo's Past Arc, which is pretty self-explanatory right here. It is a flashback arc, and it covers the events of Gojo Satoru's teenage years in Jujutsu High, along with his best friend Suguru Geto, who doesn't have any scars on his forehead. Interesting. I wonder why that is. Interesting. Within this arc, they are tasked to protect a girl called Riko Amanai, who is a special type of human known as a star plasma vessel, and she's incredibly important within the world of Jujutsu sorcery. However, there are certain organizations that want her Gonskis and out of the picture, which is where this dude comes in called Toji Zenin, and Toji is the man who was tasked with taking out Gojo and Suguru, and also taking out Riku Amanai, the sorcerer killer. The next arc after this one will be called the Shibuya Incident Arc, and all of the points within this video that I have mentioned, and I have said this is very important information, or I've gave you little hints about, all come into play within this arc. This arc and the Shibuya Incident within the manga community is widely regarded as one of the best arcs within manga. However, unfortunately, I can't really give you any sort of synopsis or teasers without actually spoiling anything that happens within this arc. All I can tell you is that this arc will be an incredible series to witness, and this new season of Jujutsu Kaisen will feature 23 episodes, and it will cover all of these events. And I can assure you, whether you're a first-time watcher or someone who has currently read the entirety of the manga, you know what's coming or you don't know what's coming, but this season will be massive. However, that is everything from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, please be sure to like and subscribe, as it always does help me out, and let me know what you're most excited for in the comments down below about Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. And as always, I will catch you guys all in the next one. Much love, big kisses, peace.